The International Space Station's emergency alerts blared as Commander Sarah Chen stared at the massive object approaching through the observation window. The metallic structure, easily 10 times the size of the ISS, had appeared seemingly from nowhere, its surface rippling with an oily iridescence. "Status report," she barked into her comm, keeping her eyes fixed on the alien vessel. "All systems are going haywire," responded Dr. Viktor Petrov, the Russian physicist, his voice tight with tension. "Whatever that thing is, it's generating some kind of electromagnetic field I've never seen before." Captain Marcus Williams, the American mission specialist, floated up beside her. "Houston's not responding. Neither is ESA or Roscosmos. We're completely cut off." Before Sarah could respond, a brilliant purple beam shot from the alien ship, enveloping the ISS in its glow. She felt a strange tingling sensation throughout her body, then everything went black. Sarah awoke in a circular chamber with walls that seemed to pulse with an inner light. The air felt thick and humid, carrying an odd metallic taste. She found herself restrained by invisible forces, floating a few inches above the floor. To her relief, she spotted Victor and Marcus nearby in similar positions. They appeared unharmed but equally confused and concerned. "Commander," Marcus called out, his military training evident in his controlled tone. "I've been awake for about 20 minutes. No sign of our captors yet, but there's definitely movement behind those walls." Victor had been studying their surroundings with scientific curiosity. "The technology here, it's beyond anything we've theorized. The way they're containing us without physical restraints, it defies our understanding of physics." A section of the wall suddenly became transparent, revealing their captors. The aliens were tall, ethereal beings with translucent skin that showed swirling patterns of bioluminescence beneath. Their elongated heads housed 3 eyes arranged in a triangle, and their limbs seemed to float independently of their torsos. One of the aliens stepped forward, its movements graceful and unsettling. A mechanical voice filled their minds: "You are now subjects of the Nexus Collective. Your species has been chosen for evaluation. Resistance is inadvisable." Sarah maintained her composure, years of command experience kicking in. "We represent a peaceful mission of scientific exploration. We request communication with our planet." The alien's middle eye pulsed with a deep purple light. "Your primitive communication systems are irrelevant. We will learn what we need directly from your minds and bodies." Marcus tensed visibly. "They can't just..." His protest was cut short as several smaller aliens entered with floating devices that emitted a soft humming sound. As they approached each human, Sarah noticed Victor making subtle hand signals. He'd spotted something. The physicist's eyes darted meaningfully toward a panel near the floor where the wall's pulsing light showed an irregular pattern. Sarah gave an almost imperceptible nod, memorizing its location. Whatever came next, they needed to gather every scrap of information about their captors and their technology. As the aliens began their tests, Sarah caught Marcus's eye. The mission specialist had also noticed their silent exchange and was already scanning for other weaknesses. They might be captives, but they were still a crew. More importantly, they were human, and humans had a long history of refusing to accept impossible situations. The mechanical voice spoke again: "Phase 1 of evaluation begins now." The tests began almost immediately after their first encounter. Sarah watched helplessly as Victor was suspended in a column of shimmering energy, his face contorted in discomfort as the aliens probed his neural responses. Fascinating, one of the aliens communicated directly into their minds. "Your species has developed complex problem-solving capabilities despite your biological limitations." Marcus, still restrained nearby, called out, "Victor, stay with us. Focus on my voice." The Russian physicist managed a weak smile. "I'm okay. They're trying to understand how we think. But they're making a mistake." The lead alien, whom Sarah had mentally dubbed Alpha, tilted its luminescent head. "Explain this mistake." You're treating us like specimens, Victor replied through gritted teeth. But you're not accounting for human adaptability. As if to demonstrate his point, Victor suddenly went limp in the energy field. The aliens' monitoring devices erupted with alarming signals, causing them to cluster around their equipment in confusion. Sarah recognized Victor's trick. He'd used his knowledge of human biological responses to fake a stress-induced blackout. The energy field disappeared, and Victor dropped to the floor. Two aliens moved to examine him, their translucent appendages reaching for his prone form. In that moment, Victor's eyes snapped open, and he managed to grab one of their scanning devices before they could restrain him again. "Commander," he shouted, tossing the device toward Sarah. Though her movements were restricted, she managed to catch it with her fingertips. The aliens reacted with unexpected hesitation, seemingly unwilling to use force to retrieve their technology. "Interesting," Alpha communicated. "You demonstrate cooperation and resource acquisition under duress. But this changes nothing." Sarah studied the device while pretending to struggle with her restraints. Its surface was covered in symbols that shifted and changed, but she noticed they followed a pattern. "Marcus, what do you make of this? Reminds me of the quantum computing research from your NASA days." Marcus squinted at the device. "Those patterns, they're similar to our quantum entanglement experiments, but far more advanced." The alien's internal illumination flickered briefly, a sign of agitation, Sarah realized. They hadn't expected their captives to comprehend even this basic aspect of their technology. "Your primitive understanding is incomplete," Alpha stated, but Sarah detected a new undertone in the telepathic communication: uncertainty. A new alien entered the chamber, its patterns glowing with urgent pulses. After a silent exchange with Alpha, the lead alien turned to the humans. "Your species presents an anomaly. You possess technological knowledge beyond your evolutionary stage. Explain." "Maybe you're not as advanced as you think," Marcus challenged. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, it's our ability to overcome obstacles through collaboration and innovation." The aliens initiated what appeared to be an intense debate, their bioluminescent patterns racing across their bodies. Sarah used this distraction to catch Victor's attention, nodding toward the irregular panel he'd noticed earlier. He blinked twice, understanding. While their captors were distracted, Sarah tested her restraints, noting how they weakened when the aliens' attention was divided. These beings, for all their advanced technology, seemed to have difficulty managing multiple tasks simultaneously. "Your species requires further study," Alpha finally announced. "We will separate you for individual analysis." As three aliens moved to transport them to different chambers, Sarah locked eyes with her crew members. They'd learned two crucial things: their captors had weaknesses, and they feared what they didn't understand. The humans were being separated, but they'd discovered something far more valuable than physical proximity: hope. And with hope came the possibility of escape. "Remember your training," Sarah called out as they were led away. Both men nodded, understanding her hidden meaning. The ISS crew selection process had emphasized psychological resilience and creative problem-solving. Now those skills would be tested in ways their trainers could never have imagined. As Sarah was moved to a new chamber, she allowed herself a small smile. The aliens thought they were conducting tests, but they were the ones being studied, and they didn't even realize it. Sarah spent 3 days in isolation, mentally mapping every detail of her containment chamber. The aliens' overconfidence was becoming apparent. They openly discussed their technology, assuming their captives couldn't comprehend it. Through the translucent walls, she noticed Victor being led to adjacent testing chambers. He'd started asking detailed questions about quantum mechanics, keeping their captors engaged in complex theoretical discussions. Meanwhile, Marcus had been deliberately failing simple tests while excelling at others, creating confusion about human capabilities. During one testing session, Sarah made her move. "Your quantum field manipulation is impressive," she told Alpha. "But you've overlooked something fundamental about human consciousness. The alien's bioluminescence pulsed with interest. Explain. Human minds are uniquely adaptable. The more you study us, the more we study you. Sarah pointed to the alien central control device. For instance, your systems rely on thought-based interfaces. We've already learned to detect the energy signatures. It was a calculated risk, revealing their observation. Alpha's patterns flashed with alarm. Impossible. Your species lacks the neural architecture for such perception. Test me, Sarah challenged. The alien activated a series of commands. Sarah, having memorized their pattern sequences, called out each function before it executed. She wasn't actually reading the alien technology, she'd simply documented their predictable command patterns. Alpha retreated, initiating an emergency conference with other aliens. Sarah knew she'd planted the seed of doubt they needed. That night, using the weakened evening security protocols they'd observed, the three humans managed to communicate through vibrations in the chamber walls. They're preparing to move us to a deeper research facility, Victor tapped out. Tomorrow. Perfect timing, Marcus responded. Their shift changes create a 3-second gap in the containment fields. Sarah shared her discovery: their neural interfaces are vulnerable to feedback loops. If we can overload them. They spent hours refining their plan. Victor would create a distraction using his apparent understanding of their quantum technology. Marcus would exploit the security gap he'd identified. Sarah would target their neural control systems. As artificial dawn approached in the ship, Sarah felt a familiar sensation, the same certainty she experienced before critical ISS operations. Their plan was dangerous, maybe impossible, but they had no choice. Humanity's first contact with alien life couldn't end in subjugation. Remember, she tapped out her final message. They don't understand human unpredictability. That's our advantage. The aliens had created the perfect conditions for their own defeat, 3 highly trained humans, given time to observe, plan, and adapt. Now they would learn why humanity had survived countless disasters and challenges throughout its history. Sarah closed her eyes, reviewing every step of their plan. Tomorrow would determine not just their fate, but potentially Earth's first impression on the wider galaxy. They had to succeed, not just for themselves, but for their entire species. The ship's lights dimmed, signaling night cycle. In a few hours, they would attempt the impossible. But then, humans had always excelled at achieving the impossible. The escape attempt began during the ship's artificial dawn. Sarah initiated their plan by triggering a feedback surge in her neural restraints, something she practiced secretly for days. The resulting energy spike cascaded through the ship's systems, temporarily disrupting the aliens' neural network. In the adjacent chamber, Victor seized his moment. Your quantum field theory has a critical flaw, he announced to his guards. Human consciousness creates unexpected interference patterns. As the aliens moved to analyze this claim, he activated the device he'd secretly modified during his failed experiments. The ship's lights flickered violently. Through the translucent walls, Sarah saw other containment cells activating, cells holding creatures she hadn't known existed. Their captors had an entire menagerie of imprisoned species. Marcus executed his part perfectly. During the 3-second security gap, he managed to override the door controls using techniques he'd learned from observing the aliens' command patterns. The doors throughout the detention level slid open with a synchronized hiss. Now! Sarah shouted, knowing the translation field would carry her voice to all chambers. Everyone out! The response exceeded their expectations. Beings of all forms, some gaseous, others crystalline, some defying description, poured from their cells. The aliens' careful categorization of species had backfired spectacularly, as each race brought unique abilities to the chaos. A crystalline entity shattered the remaining security barriers. Gaseous beings overwhelmed the ship's ventilation systems. Something that looked like living lightning shorted out entire sections of the alien technology. Sarah, Victor, and Marcus regrouped in the main corridor. The bridge is 3 levels up, Sarah said, recalling the ship's layout from her observations. We need to secure it before they can call reinforcements. They fought their way upward, aided by their fellow escapees. The aliens' overspecialization became their weakness. They couldn't adapt quickly enough to the multiple threats presented by their diverse former captives. Victor worked with several of the more technologically advanced species to disable the ship's quantum communication array. Marcus coordinated with beings that could navigate the ship's internal systems. Sarah led the direct assault on the command center, her crew training proving invaluable in organizing the disparate species into an effective force. As they reached the bridge, Alpha confronted them. You cannot comprehend the consequences of your actions, it projected. The Nexus Collective will respond with overwhelming force. You still don't understand, Sarah replied. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every species you've underestimated and imprisoned. And we're not alone anymore. The bridge erupted into chaos as the combined force of escaped prisoners overwhelmed the alien command staff. Sarah watched in amazement as beings who had been captives moments ago worked together instinctively, each contributing their unique abilities to secure the ship. Victory was within reach, but Sarah knew the hardest part was still to come. They had to find a way to get everyone home, and ensure the Nexus Collective could never threaten them again. The final battle for the alien vessel began in the ship's central control hub. Sarah, Victor, and Marcus had successfully rallied their diverse group of escaped prisoners, but the Nexus Collective wasn't finished yet. Multiple ships approaching, Victor called out, interpreting the quantum radar displays with help from a crystalline being. They're charging weapons. Sarah turned to their assembled allies. Everyone, take your positions. Remember what we planned. The various species moved with practiced coordination, hours of preparation paying off as each took their specialized roles. Marcus worked with the energy-based lifeforms to reinforce the ship's shields, while the gaseous entities enhanced the propulsion systems. The human-led rebellion had turned the aliens' own technology against them. Incoming transmission announced a telepathic species that had joined their cause. Alpha's image appeared on the main display. Your resistance ends now, Alpha proclaimed. Surrender, and your species may be spared. Sarah stepped forward. We've uploaded evidence of your experiments to every quantum frequency we could access. The galaxy will know what you've done. And we've modified your containment technology, Victor added. Any attempt to recapture us will result in a cascade failure through your entire system. The humans had spent their captivity learning not just to escape, but to ensure no one else would suffer the same fate. The ship's database had revealed the collective's true purpose. They weren't scientists, but advanced scouts for an invasion force. As the enemy ships opened fire, their makeshift crew responded with unexpected precision. The crystalline beings redirected energy weapons, while Marcus's modifications allowed them to pierce the collective's supposedly impenetrable shields. Their neural network is destabilizing, Victor reported. The feedback loop is working. The battle reached its climax as Sarah executed their final gambit, a concentrated burst of human brainwave patterns, amplified by their allies' combined abilities. The collective's neural interfaces, designed to control and subdue, couldn't handle the chaos of unfettered human consciousness multiplied across thousands of channels. One by one, the enemy ships went dark. Their crews, overwhelmed by the neural assault, lost control of their vessels. The resistance had won, but victory came with revelations. We can't go back, Sarah realized, looking at the assembled species. Not yet. There are more prisoners out there, more collective ships. Victor nodded. We've become something they never expected, proof that different species can work together as equals. Marcus smiled. Humanity's first official interstellar alliance. Not bad for 3 lost astronauts. As they set course to rescue other captives, Sarah reflected on their journey. They'd been abducted as test subjects but had become liberators. The collective had wanted to study human adaptability, they'd succeeded beyond their wildest fears. The ship, once a prison, now carried a message across the stars: never underestimate the power of cooperation, determination, and the unshakable human spirit of freedom. Their mission had changed, but the core remained the same: exploration, discovery, and the protection of life in all its forms. Earth would have to wait for their return, but when they did come home, they'd bring with them a united galaxy ready to stand against any threat to freedom.